Call this meeting to order. Councillors, could I have a motion to approve this agenda? Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Seeing none, could you please stand if you're able and sing our national anthem? Thank you. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. We would like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa of the Three Fires Confederacy. Okay. Next item is adoption of the minutes of the previous council meeting. May I have a motion? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Post. All in favor? Okay, rolling right along. We've got presentations tonight. First one is from Credit Valley Conservation. They're going to present their budget.
Magic. Good evening, Mayor Brown, member of council, and I might say, what a lovely new chamber you have. It's so much better than staring at the pole while I'm presenting. So,
right. Thank you.
Congratulations on getting this done. I have Jeff Payne with me tonight, and also Roger Therikin, our finance manager. So if you have any real tough questions about the budget, he's here to help answer them. So,
okay.
I feel like I got to be back a little further from this. Okay, so tonight we're just going to take a quick run through the 2020 budget, and then we've got some pretty pictures to show you, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the future items. So right away we'll get into the budget, and you've already had the package sent to you previously, which I believe is in your package tonight as well. So this shows you the apportionment by municipality that's used to distribute our general levy. Orangeville's proportionment is roughly 2.4% of our total levy. And this year you had a slight decrease in your apportionment of 0.036%. So the result is an overall apportionment decrease of $3,454 instead of is what you would have paid if it was last year's apportionment. So this slide presents the total picture of Orangeville's budget for CVC, and it shows you both where you sit relative to our total levy. So your portion of the general levy is increasing by 1.89%, or $4,319, and the special shared levy is decreasing by 0.91%, or $513. So your total 2020 levy is 1.34%, or $3,806 over 2019. So this is a budget forecast that we prepare. They're looking into 2021, and that forecast is 3.86% right now, but we do look at them very carefully year over year. And it's 3.77 for Orangeville. We have put a box around 2022 because of the changes the province is bringing on for us, and we are not sure exactly which budget year they will materialize, but we anticipate it would be the 2020 budget year. The changes that they are requesting will result in us having to rejig all of our budget, and so these numbers would be meaningless. We just provide a little bit of an overview of how our budget is broken down and who pays the proportion. So 53% of our budget is municipal funding. I would just draw your attention to the 1% portion of the province. Last April, or this past April, they cut our municipal, or our transfer payment by about 50%, so we lost $89,000 last year. So we're down to $95,000 of the provincial funding on our total budget. And we do work to provide chargebacks and user fees as well. So that's shown in this next slide, our self-generated fees and our alternate sources of revenue. So we do have significant generation of fees through our conservation areas, our planning and regulation fees, as well as we charge fees to education programs, and we have a nursery as well that generates some revenue. We have a lot of alternate sources of funding as well. It includes grants and donations and partnerships and service agreements and the transfer payments from the province, as well as other grants that are coming through. We've taken advantage of the National Disaster Mitigation Program, as well as the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities grants as well. So in total, we have about $6 million that we contribute to the bottom line every year. So some of you may have noticed that the conservation authorities, and CBC included, have been running a social media campaign to educate the general public and stakeholders about the work we do and why it matters. So we thought, since we've done all that work, we're going to share those with you. And if you want to see more of those things, just follow us on Twitter or some of our other social media platforms. We were invited down to visit with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks this fall, and we were offered an opportunity to tell them what we do. And so we updated our jurisdiction slide, so we just thought we'd share it with you as well. We have a jurisdiction of about 1,000 square kilometers, and in that we have 10 conservation areas, but only a couple that are, 4 of them in total, that are revenue generating. And of course, Island Lake is one of our best revenue generators, and it's right here in the heart of Orangeville. We have an amazing volunteer base that contributes roughly 16,000 hours of time annually, and that's equivalent to about 9 full-time equivalents. So if we had to rely on funding those people, it would be a much more difficult activity for us. We own 2,800 hectares of land, and 820 acres of that is in the Island Lake Conservation Area. So a very significant place here. In 2018, our planning staff received about 390 planning applications and inquiries to comment on, and 395 permit applications watershed-wide. So to date, we figure we're probably on track to do the same thing this year. We've made sure this year that all of our planning staff have had customer service training so that they are both keen on timeliness as well as customer orientation and service orientation, and to meet the requirements of the province that they want things a little faster. So we're going to see what we can do to help out. So through our work in reviewing the applications and with the expertise of our staff, as we work together with your staff, we are keeping people and properties safe, and one application and one environmental assessment at a time. We have a network of real-time gauges that collect and share 23,000 data points per day with municipal partners, agencies, and the public, and it's all reachable from our website. The gauging network supports our natural hazards work, and with climate change, we need to be able to see the impacts of weather in real time, and certainly Orangeville's been no stranger to that, and being able to have rain gauges up here that we can access in a minute's notice is very helpful. So this also helps us deal with our flood forecasting and warning systems as well. So I put this one up. Hopefully you can see it well enough on the screen. We are developing flood risk maps that are going to help our municipal partners manage the flood risk and to help develop mitigation solutions. So these pictures are showing the worst-case scenario if Hurricane Hazel falls over the town. And I know you have been chatting with our staff about the Orangeville Fire Hall, and we are working quite closely together to address the situation both in the closer to Highway 10 as well as in that locale. We have been working with your staff to look for flood mitigation solutions as well, and so we can assess the potential to actually achieve a flood mitigation solution. So one of the things with the flood risk mapping that with the tools we can now do is to be able to look at what return frequency a road would flood or a certain property would be at risk, so that we can focus first responders' efforts into the right places at the right time. So it's not just a general risk with a flooding, but actually being able to predict which roads are going to need the most attention first. We have an integrated watershed monitoring program that we have a number of staff who collect data from streams and groundwater and forests and wetlands and the climate stations. And some of those sites have been done for more than 20 years and some as far back as the 1960s. So it gives us a really good sense of where we're at today in our quality of environment, as well as where we're going to be heading in our trends. So it's monitoring and science are the backbone of the work that we do, and all of it contributes to our plans and our decisions that we're making, both internally and with our partners outside. We've done some tallying up of the number of trees we planted in the last 10 years, and that's roughly 900,000 trees and shrubs, which is a pretty impressive number. And that those trees have retained nearly 406 million liters of runoff and captured 17,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide, which is equivalent to about 3,600 cars annually. And those trees for us are still really small after with only being basically 10 years old. So just think what they're going to do over their lifetime for climate change. Our restoration activities do contribute in a meaningful way to the growth of the watershed's natural heritage system, the carbon sequestration, and reducing runoff. This past June, we opened an extension to our Warwick Conservation Center, which is the home for our forestry and invasive species folks and our rural outreach teams. So this means that both we're a little more close to the heart of where we're doing our work, but it also allows us to support the staff that we need to continue to do that work. We've been working with Greening Corporate Grounds program, and the Headwaters Health Center in Orangeville is developing a sustainable landscaping plan for their property, and that helps to reduce runoff. So we've got, we're helping our corporate leaders to take conservation actions. We've had a couple of successful community tree planting events with Sustainable Orangeville this year, one on Earth Day and in October along Menorah Creek. We had approximately 100 volunteers plant 550 trees and shrubs, and 200 students from Orangeville high schools have also contributed almost 800 hours to restoration projects in the town and at Island Lake Conservation Area. Our foundation, as I mentioned earlier, does raise money for us, and this year they've raised over $1.5 million, and we had a $5 million five-year campaign, and we finished that a year early. So they're still continuing on. They want to see how much they beat the record by, but it's a very important thing for us, and one of their main fundraising activities is for the Credit Valley Trail and land acquisition that will go with it. Some of you may have been into Island Lake and have seen the construction we're doing on our one-of-a-kind natural playground, and that's had tremendous support from the Orangeville Lions Club and the Rotary Club of Orangeville, and also, of course, we never do anything without the Friends of Island Lake as well, who've been so instrumental to getting these things done. So it's a 1-acre natural playground, and it has elements like plants and water and logs and boulders, and kids can get dirty and they can have fun, and we're hoping it's going to be a huge success when it opens later in the spring. We've had about 4,000 students visit the Upper Grand District School Board Outdoor Education Center at Island Lake in 2019, and that program supports enhancing environmental literacy among watershed students and cultivating perhaps some future conservationists. In total, we had more than 750,000 people visit CBC's conservation areas in 2019, and more than 220,000 of those people annually visit Island Lake Conservation Area. So it's really a really important hub in our conservation areas. We've spent a lot of time improving that park, and we've still got lots more to do. We have also initiated with Jeff's team a library pass program, and that's available in Orangeville and Grand Valley and Caledon, as well as other places in the watershed. And we've had those passes signed out almost 2,000 times over 2018. We don't have the numbers in, but that allows a family to go and at no cost to themselves go to use our conservation areas and the trails or other things. So I'm really pleased at how successful that has been across the watershed. And finally, just to mention our Credit Valley Trail. As you know, you've got the headwaters of that trail right here with the Vicky Bear and Lakeside Trail. So it will be either the start or the finish of the trail, depending which way you're going. But someday, that trail will be connected all the way to Port Credit by 100 kilometers of trail through the Credit Valley. So we're really thrilled that we've been able to brand it. So that's our new logo for the Credit Valley Trail. We've got hundreds of people working on this with us, and it's going to be a long-term vision, but we've already secured our first property to build part of the trail on, and we're getting a lot of momentum along the way. So just a couple of words. Sometimes I tell you about things that we'd like to be doing that we're not doing, and I'm not going to do this today. You know about what we do and the value it brings to your community. We have a lot of uncertainty around us. I wish I could tell you more about what the province has in store for us, but all they've said is that they plan to do some consultation with us in January about the regulations. We're not sure if the regulations will be with the consultation or just talking about what they should be putting as the meat on the bones of the act that they passed in June of this year. What we do know is they've defined 3 mandatory programs that they want us to levy for, and that includes source protection, natural hazards, and conservation lands. We've not determined how the program and services we offer will be affected, and therefore we don't know how it's going to affect our budget, and the content of the regulations is, until the content of the regulations is drafted. So we also don't know when that is going to occur. As I said earlier, I can't project my budget I'm projecting into 2021, but if they don't have the regulations finished by, basically January or February this year, I can't change my budget for 2021 because we need to be in cycle with the municipal budget cycles, which for us, we need to be completed by June, typically to feed into Peel and Halton as our major partners. So we know that you're also facing challenges, and we need to work together to be as effective as we can. And so I just want you to know that you have our commitment to continue to work hand in hand to meet all our joint objectives. So for now, all we're trying to do is keep calm, carry on with business as usual, and just make sure that we're doing the good work we always have done. So thank you for the chance to come and chat tonight, and we'd be happy to answer some questions.
Well, I think speaking for all of council, and all the residents of this area, we're so fortunate to have Island Lake Conservation Area in our backyard, and I know a lot of the council members here have been out on the trail system there, and it's really a fantastic asset for our area. So thank you to those who put that together, and it continues to evolve with that playscape, and it's a wonderful part of, I guess it's a tourism asset as well as a recreational asset for our local area. Okay, Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Thank you, Worship. I also appreciate the great work that you folks do. I was really glad tonight to hear you mention our local fire department. We have a problem. We need your help. We need to find a solution. This is a $10 million or more problem that we have, and we really need your help on this, and hopefully we can get together in the near future and find some type of solution.
Staff have been working together to find those solutions, and at the end of the day, it's in the floodplain, and so you have to be able to respond, and if you can't respond with water in the way, so there's either a mitigation solution potentially, but it can't affect other people either. So staff are more than willing to sit down, and I know they've already been working with Mr. Jones to also find some some common ground and figure out what we can do. But we have the tools now, and we have them updated data, so that gives us a much better perspective on what we can do and how we've got better models and all that. So we've got all the tools at our disposal now. We just need to finish that work.
Thank you.
Right, and I just want to thank you again for managing your budget and helping with our budget as well. So I know you worked diligently there to keep it at a low rate. Was it 1.34? Is that the number? I think so, yeah. So thank you very much for that. Any other council members wish to comment? Thank you so much for your report today. Okay. So our second presentation is from a delegation led by Ms. Debbie Van Wyck. Settlers Creek safety concerns. Welcome. Okay. Your name again, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Dana Crane. Good evening. Sorry, let me just take this out. I'm nervous. I've never done this before.
It's okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. We'd like to thank you for your service to the community, and also thank you for the opportunity to present some growing safety concerns we have on behalf of the Settlers Creek neighborhood, which is a community within West Orangeville. As I said, my name is Dana Crane. My co-presenters are Debbie Van Wyck and Melanie Chapman. We're honored to speak to you tonight on behalf of over 700 residents of Settlers Creek who have signed a petition requesting, sorry, I lost myself, requesting that this council consider implementing some serious safety, requesting that this council consider implementing some changes to improve safety concerns within our community. What started out as a grassroots online group of people in our neighborhood voicing their concerns about safety grew into community meetings focused on increasing concerns over traffic and speeding in our neighborhood. A large group of residents met and brainstormed ways that we could work together to make our neighborhood a safer area. We have two very concerning corners, Riddell and Alder and Riddell and Spencer. Both of these corners are very busy intersections. Turning left at these corners is very difficult. There have been several accidents, one where a child was injured and one where there was a fatality. With the increased traffic due to businesses that are now open at the end of Spencer, the condo building that is currently being built, and a hotel in the future, this intersection is only going to become increasingly more dangerous. Second, Spencer Avenue is being used as a cut-through to avoid the bypass. People are going up Spencer along Beeline. Speeding has increased greatly since Spencer Avenue opened up in 2017. In 2017, there were 7 speeding charges laid by the police. In 2018, even after your council lowered the speed limit on Spencer from a 50 to a 40 and made it a community safety zone, there were 9 speeding charges laid. To date, in 2019, we've had 67 speeding charges laid on Spencer alone. We believe it's just a matter of time before something tragic happens. By addressing these concerns, we think that we can work together to make our community a safer place to be. Tonight, we're asking council to install advanced green signals at Riddell and Spencer, as well as Riddell and Alder. And we're also asking for 4-way stops to be installed on Spencer Road at Abbey and Spencer and Abbey and Sherwood. We know from the police that speeding in our area is a problem. By council approving these changes, the residents of Orangeville will be safer turning at these intersections, and the traffic on Spencer will slow down. We thank you for your time and request that you take our safety concerns seriously and grant the request of the petitioners in front of you. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Councillor Andrews, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I did. Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation. For those of us who don't live in the area but are very familiar with the area, I do sympathize. I have had the opportunity traveling on Spencer, Abbey, and other locations. I have a number of colleagues of mine. My office is located very close to that area, and I have seen an increase and concerns of turning left as I'm heading north on Riddell, and I do sympathize with maybe the design and the concerns and the safety issues that have been brought to council today. I'm not sure where this is going to land, but what I am concerned about is the ability for us to have some resolution that is going to end up solving some of the problems. That's why we have Mr. Jones and his department, who are experts in this area, and I know that they've had the opportunity to review some of this information. All I can say is that I'm in support of some of the requests that you have, but we have to rely on staff to provide guidance to ensure that we are, in fact, making the decision that will help not only solve your issue, but also avoid any potential tragedy that could happen somewhere down the road.
Very good. Thanks, Councillor Andrews. I also just want to weigh in for a moment. So today in the City of Toronto was the rolling out of the first automatic speed enforcement, so photo radar in Toronto, and the province has allowed municipalities to get involved in this type of speed enforcement. So, you know, Spencer being now a community safety zone, it we'd be allowed to put automatic speed enforcement there. So that might help alleviate these problems. So we're, I think, going to be looking at that in the new year, as well as some of the other safety issues that you've brought forward here. Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Thank you, Worship. This question is two questions from Mr. Jones. All Riddell Road, is that looked after by the county? My second question is basically, what do you think of this report?
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor McIntosh, Riddell Road is a bit of a vagary in that we own the right-of-way, we maintain the right-of-way. However, it is posted as County Road 109, and it operates as an integral part of the county's road network. The county also does provide winter maintenance on it. So while it is a town road, in many ways the town and the county are in this together. With respect to this evening's presentation, some of these issues are issues that I've heard before, and I'll get to that in a moment. First of all, I just like to give as a little bit of background. The town's official plan includes a hierarchy of roads, and there's a map that shows the different roads within town. We have local roads, which provide access to properties, are typically low traffic roads. We have collector roads, which, while they provide access to property, they do provide for movement between neighborhoods. And ultimately, you have collector roads, which provide free movement of traffic and are built for higher traffic volumes and higher speeds. Riddell Road is classified as an arterial road within the town's official plan. High traffic volumes were anticipated in the designs of these roads, and in fact, my understanding is that Riddell Road was built to a 100-kilometer-an-hour design speed. It's common to design for a higher speed than is the speed limit on a road. With respect to the requests that were made this evening, I'll deal with them sequentially, with the second one first regarding stop signs. Spencer Avenue between Beeline and Abbey Road was built in the late 90s. The missing link, as it were, between Abbey Road and Riddell Road was not opened until 2016. And when it opened, it significantly changed the volumes of traffic on Spencer, as would be anticipated. In 2017, staff received a request for all-way stop controls at Spencer and Abbey and Sherwood, and I believe Ms. Crane was the requester of those. In accordance with the town's policy, we arranged for traffic counts to take place at each of these intersections and evaluated them. The Ontario Traffic Manual Book 5 sets out the justifications for all-way stop controls at intersections, and it states that all-way stop controls disrupt the flow of traffic and introduce delays to drivers within all parts of the intersection and should only be considered at intersections where two relatively equal roadways having similar traffic volumes, demands, and characteristics exist. So the analysis was undertaken, and it was determined that neither of these intersections met the justification for all-way stop controls. It should also be noted that the Ontario Traffic Manual does give examples of inappropriate uses for all-way stop controls, and they indicate that it's inappropriate to use them to control speed or to provide traffic calming. With respect to the advanced green and left turn signals at Alder and Spencer, the issue of an advanced green at Spencer was first brought up to me by Councillor Taylor back in January. As I noted earlier, Riddell Road is a town road, but it's operated in cooperation with the county, and when this request was made, I did reach out to the county to have a conversation on this. Conveniently, the county had engaged a consultant to undertake a capacity study on County Road 109, including Riddell Road at the time. And because of it, they had up-to-date traffic counts. We requested that the county's consultant be permitted to undertake a justification analysis on the data that they had collected. The Ontario Traffic Manual Book 12 is the governing document that evaluates the justifications for traffic signals and for advanced left turns. And the consultant used the available information to undertake a justification analysis, and ultimately they determined that none of the justifications were met based on the data that they had at the time. Now, once again, I did reach out to the county after seeing that this delegation was going to be on the agenda this evening and discuss the matter with them. And their response to me was that essentially that if changes are going to be considered, it is important that any proposed changes be thoroughly reviewed, technically warranted, and considered holistically along Riddell Road, not just individually at these intersections, but within the context of the entire roadway. When contemplating changes that will certainly impact the flow of traffic on Riddell Road, full context is key, and changes in isolation should be avoided. Isolated action often results in the worsening of existing conditions and the creation of new issues. So ultimately, if this is something we are going to look into, it's a bigger analysis than simply looking at one intersection. It needs to be looked at holistically. That said, having reviewed the delegation that was provided to Council as part of this agenda, it struck me that perhaps the concerns of the residents dealt less with the volumes of left-turning traffic, which is essentially what the justification analysis is based on, and dealt more with the geometry of the intersection, the difficulty to see oncoming traffic when making a left turn. That was something that we discussed back in January with the county and along with the consultant, and ultimately it was determined that the layout of the intersection is conventional for intersections that involve islands, and that there don't appear to be any unusual horizontal or vertical sightline constraints at these intersections.
Okay. Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question for the presenter and staff as well. Thank you very much for your heartfelt presentation. I'm not really seeing in your presentation, are you asking for advanced screens on both north and south on Riddell at both intersections, or just north going west for advanced screens?
We assume that it would be both. If you've got one going this way, it makes sense to have one going the other way as well.
So that is your request, to have it both north and south? Okay. At both intersections, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so now my question to staff is, oh, and just one more quick question. Did you have an idea of the length of time you wanted the advance? Like how many seconds or anything like that? Okay, so my question to staff is, how much does something like this cost, and would the county be paying or would we be paying for that?
Mr. Jones.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Sherwood, I don't have a cost on hand, but if we were to do a holistic analysis, we would be looking at probably taking traffic counts along Riddell, traffic counts on the side streets to evaluate the situation and determine what upgrades may be required. My understanding is that the signals at both Riddell and Spencer do not include a fourth head, in other words, an advanced left head, so there would be construction work involved with putting up new signal heads, engaging in changing the programming for the signals and so forth. And all of these costs would be incurred by the town of Orangeville as they are our signals.
So you really don't have any estimate at how much an advance light would cost?
At this point, no.
And can you just tell me what is the least length of time for an advanced screen? Like, for example, the highways are usually quite a significant length of time. What is the shortest length of time? Like, would it typically allow 6 cars to get through or 4? I'm trying to think of not holding up traffic on Riddell. You want that traffic to keep going, so you don't want a long advance.
Again, it would be informed by the traffic counts, looking at what the queuing typically was and how long it took for traffic to turn. Based on the counts that we have, there does not appear to be a tremendous amount of queuing, even at peak hours. It's uncommon for cars to have to wait more than 2 cycles, and often they get to turn within the same cycle, which means that it really isn't, based on the counts we have, it isn't justified. If we did this analysis and it turned out that advanced lefts were justified, then the length of time for the advanced would be informed by that analysis to try and clear the traffic in the turn lane.
Thank you.
Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the delegation, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate all the hard work you've put into this, and I always like when residents come to speak to us about these issues because we can't be everywhere at once, obviously. There's been a bit of a groundswell when it comes to safety issues in town. As a pedestrian and cyclist, I can sympathize with those. I've seen my share, for sure. Not having the answers specifically, I do believe this needs to go through a higher level exercise, not just for one neighborhood, but for the town. We have a manageable area to deal with and certainly some hot spots that should be looked at. But I think between the citizen groups that have started to bring up some of these issues in the downtown, on the West End, and some other areas, I think it's worth looking into how to get these groups together and get some priorities and some ideas churning between everybody. So that's not a solution yet per se, but I obviously support the notion and the effort that's going into these types of discussions. That said, to touch on your 2 topics, as a resident of the downtown, I can tell you that stop signs only increase the speed between stop signs. It's amazing how quick people get up to speed in only about 50 or 60 meters. So I can sympathize with and understand the engineering judgment that says stop signs don't necessarily create or reduce traffic concerns in the area. So not ruling it out, but just personal observation on that end. Secondly, on Riddell, it's almost a shame that the sort of roundabout design and prominence in North America came a little too late for that road, because I think those are both intersections that would do very well if the geometry was available there. So again, I think as part of a larger study, getting some more people to cross-pollinate and have these conversations needs to happen, and I'm right there with you.
On that last comment, so as a member of Dufferin County Council, I've just joined the Infrastructure Committee, and I've already had conversations with Scott Burns about roundabouts. And he's quite excited about that notion and wants to further pursue roundabouts in Dufferin County generally. So, yeah, it's good news all around. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you again, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Peters, for highlighting some of the other traffic options that are available. And again, I don't want to put Mr. Jones on the spot here, but and I think the reason why I'm asking this question is just for clarification. When it comes to a traffic count study, do you have the opportunity to impose on the company or whomever is doing it the timing? And I just want to issue this because I know that traveling on Riddell, and I do so at various times, there is a peak in the morning, there's a peak in the evening. I can tell from personal experience that I've had near misses trying to turn left and turn right onto that road. And it seems to either happen when people are in a rush to get home at the end of the day. So I guess the question again is, do we have the opportunity of imposing when a traffic count is conducted, or is that at the liberty of the company that is being hired?
Mr. Jones.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Andrews, no, absolutely, it is dictated. In fact, it's dictated by the Ontario Traffic Manual. These counts need to be taken at the morning peak as well as the evening peak. Obviously, doing traffic counts at 2 in the morning on a Sunday probably wouldn't be very useful. It's critical that they be taken at the correct time, because that's the time when it is, of course, the most critical. You know, I would argue that there are times of day when it's light enough that this issue simply doesn't exist. The concern is at those peak hours.
Okay, I think, Councillor Taylor, go ahead. Sorry.
Through your worship to the clerk, I'm wondering, Karen, if you'd be able to get the petition so that council could see who has signed and who hasn't, would be my first one. And then just an observation, certainly Mr. Jones is the expert and not myself. However, I do disagree with the intersection comment about how it's constructed. And when you pull into that intersection, you have to make an absolute S-turn so that you're over far enough so that you can see. I fundamentally disagree with the assessment that it's a safe intersection. So again, not the engineer, I'm just somebody who drives in that area on a fairly regular basis. You cannot see around the traffic that is in front of you to turn left if you're heading north off of Riddell. So we can have a professional opinion, and then we can have just the layman's opinion. And you know, I think that's why these people are here, is because they're struggling to drive that intersection on a daily basis. If there really was a true solve, this is the cheaper solve, but a true solve would be to rip apart that intersection. And I am not suggesting that. You know, we need to be cognizant of our financial obligations, but the intersection in my mind was not set up in a way that is easy to navigate on a regular basis.
Is that because of southbound large trucks turning left onto Centennial?
It's part of it, Your Worship, and also just the way the island is set up. You are kind of stuck, sort of, I don't even know how to put it, but they're not quite in front of you, so you can't see around them. They're askew, so you'd have to kind of pull out and in, and if you're not familiar with that, you're stuck trying to figure out what had happened. And the gentleman that passed away, that's what happened.
He made a bad judgment.
He made a bad judgment and paid the price. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I just to recap, I think everybody on this panel is interested in safety there. I think we need to look at it deeper into this and probably get, Mr. Jones, how can we, have you done a traffic study on that intersection?
Your Worship, as I noted, there were traffic count data available last January when this issue was first brought to staff's attention, and that was used to go through and evaluate the justifications for an advanced left. Those are based primarily on the volume of left-turning traffic. And listening to the comments that Councillor Taylor made, I would suggest that any part of this evaluation would need to be a full evaluation of the geometry of that intersection. And if indeed we determine that the geometry of the intersection is inappropriate, then it is our responsibility to make those changes regardless of how costly they may be. Based on the analyses that we've had thus far, it appears to be a conventional layout for an intersection with opposing left turn lanes with islands. But if council is interested in looking at this, that is probably something that should be looked at as well. Because, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, I was seeing nods when I made the comment earlier that this is less a comment about the amount of volume and traffic backing up on Riddell because there's just not enough time to turn, and more about the safety of the turn and the inability to see. And that's not going to be solved by an advanced left. That would be solved by reconfiguring the intersection.
Right. Do you have an idea of cost of a consultation to do a review of the geometry of the intersection?
I don't. We would certainly be bringing in a consultant that is familiar with road design to do the analysis and to evaluate it and to provide us with recommendations. Certainly the cost to have a consultant do it probably wouldn't be enormous. Something less than $30,000 in all likelihood, probably quite a bit less. Right. The costs would be, of course, in implementing any recommendations that they may have.
Right. Okay. Deputy Mayor McIntosh?
Thank you, Worship. I truly feel that's the way to go. Obviously, these folks, 700 of them, feel that this is unsafe. I just think it needs to be looked into a little better. I would certainly would support that.
Right.
And there's a gentleman back there who wants to
Yes,
speak. Is he
I
allowed?
was just made aware of that. So just to recap, though, Councillor Taylor, I'm going to ask you, a review, a more thorough review of the geometry of that intersection is something you'd recommend? No? Okay.
This is the one thing, and I realize maybe this will be perceived as rammy. We've got something in front of us that has 700 people signing it. I'd like this passed tonight. I'd like this to go through. I don't want to waste our time going through things, and I mean no disrespect to people who have the knowledge of it. We have a public that more than 50% of the people that live in that area have signed. The 50% that didn't sign, for whatever reason, weren't got to. They didn't answer the door, or they didn't sign up on social media. We wait and we go for extra studies, and candidly, as a taxpayer, I just get frustrated with that. We have a public outcry. We have people here that want this to go through. Let's pass this tonight and get this done. That's what I'd like to have happen.
Right. However, we have no dollar value on this, right? So could we perhaps...
So, Your Worship, if that was the case, then I would be interested in having a discussion about what the dollar amount is, and contingent upon us agreeing on what the dollar amount is after we get,
Okay.
you know, I'd like it passed after that. But I don't want to go to study and take an inordinate amount of time when we already have the feedback from the public saying this is what they want.
Right. Okay. Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll respond to the topic at hand first. Councillor Taylor, definitely appreciate the passion you have behind this, and I agree. There are many people looking for an answer. When that advanced green expires, you still have the same geometry issues. Someone who's making a left after that green may encounter the same fate as the other gentleman. So I'm not ready to jump on an advance until we know that that's the correct answer for that intersection. On a secondary note, I was going to request through you, Mr. Mayor, that you bring up these two intersections at your infrastructure committee.
Absolutely.
I don't know if we need to formally do that, or, but these should be on the hot list, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think about Alder and Spencer, and I think there's probably some real estate there where a roundabout could be, maybe not so much at Spencer. However, there is some land there that might, but I'm a big proponent of roundabouts, and I think that would really resolve at both of those intersections this problem, and we'd have to get our county counterparts on board with this as well, and hopefully share some costs on that. But in the interim, you're concerned about the safety right now, which we understand. I'm wondering, Mr. Jones, if we could maybe make a motion for you to come back to us with a cost for next council meeting of implementing a left-hand at that intersection, and also the cost of engineering to do a more thorough study of the geometry, as Councillor Peter just brought up, so that next council meeting we could, is that possible?
To be clear, Your Worship, you're asking for the cost of implementing the left turn signals at both Spencer and Alder for both directions?
Maybe we can make a call at that time. Is that, councillors, does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So that would be, let's continue with Councillor Taylor, Councillor Post, and then maybe develop a motion to pass. Is that all right? Okay. Councillor Taylor?
That sounds fine to me, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to address my good friend, Mr. Peters, Councillor Peters, excuse me. I do agree with what you've said about the intersection and the left-hand turn. The piece that is the headwinds of the issue is when it is busy, and Councillor Andrews has mentioned when it's busy, and that busyness lasts between kind of 5:45 and I'll make it up 8:30, and then at night, you know, we'd have a similar thing. It is quite a problem. But on a Saturday afternoon at 3:30, no, there's no issue. You can see because nobody's there. But boy, when there's traffic and trucks, it's it's stressful and it's a problem. So you're right. It's just there's those inflection points, I guess 10 times a week, right? Morning and night, Monday to Friday, where it's like, oh, this is uncomfortable and dangerous. And other than that, I agree with what you'd said.
Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the comments from all of our council so far, especially about the intersection of the bypass and Spencer. I think that that's a pretty dangerous intersection. I encounter that quite frequently myself. And I know that there's some sightline issues there, and I'm glad that we're doing something to address that. What I wanted to talk about a little bit was the stop signs. I'm a big proponent of trying to enhance some of the safety concerns that we have around the community, and I know that Spencer's one of them, Abbey Road is one of them, around Alder, around Zina, we've had some requests through College. And I think overall what we're seeing is that although that there is some speed issues, some traffic issues, there's traffic calming measures that need to be taken. And while they don't necessarily meet the Ontario Traffic Manual as laid out by Mr. Jones, I think we have a responsibility to our community to try and find some traffic mitigating measures that are going to help the situation, reduce the speed, and will still comply with the Ontario Traffic Manual. So I don't know what those are, Mr. Jones, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think that there are traffic calming things that have to happen, and while a stop sign may not be the right answer, I think we have to have some sort of an answer of what we can do for some of these key areas in the community. So I'll leave it to you to maybe you have something, or is there something we can add into a motion that you could come back with some ideas for us, especially for those areas that I've identified through the West End there, through Zina, through College. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Thank you, Worship. One last time. This is to the presenters. The mayor had talked before about cameras, speed radar, whatever you want to call it. Is that something that you feel would be acceptable?
One of the problems besides speed at Abbey and Spencer is that when cars are parked too deep in their driveways, when you go to pull off Cornwall Gate or off of Abbey onto Spencer, the visibility, you have to pull right out into the intersection before you can see. There's a school bus stop right there, and then in the winter we have giant snowbanks there as well. And everybody that lives on Althorpe, Buckingham, pardon me? Oh, sorry. Everybody that lives on Althorpe, Buckingham, and I forget the little one, Northampton, all when we went door to door said, we hate coming out of that, out onto Spencer because we can't see what's coming from the west at all. And so it's not just a speed calming thing, it's a visibility thing there as well. And, as long as people are parking too deep and they have every right to park too deep in their driveways, but as long as they're there, we can't see leaving.
Right. In my driving career from being a crazy teenager to now, here I am, 61, and trying to drive reasonably. Sometimes I'll avoid intersections that I feel are dangerous, and I know to get into your neighborhood, if you're coming home from the city, there's the option of traveling along Town Line and up B Line and coming in a more benign way into the neighborhood. So for those of you who are concerned about that turn, you don't have to make it, right? You can avoid that turn if you have to. And I agree with you. There are sometimes some snow piling issues at corners and things like that. But again, coming out Abbey onto Spencer, there is another option. You could have gone the other way and gone right onto the highway, right, coming back that way, rather than coming out and making a left onto.
Am I allowed to speak?
Okay, of course.
For us leaving Buckingham, Althorpe, and Northampton, we have two options. We can leave our neighborhood by going out at Abbey Spencer, or by going out at Spencer Sherwood. Right. We only have those two options. We don't have a back way to get out.
Okay.
And as you said, you can avoid going to the light. And when we were doing our door-to-door campaign, there were several people who have said they avoid that light because they don't want to take their life in their hands, that they know there's been a fatality, they know that that intersection is not correct, and they don't want to risk their families' lives. And we're here asking the town to do something so that no one else gets killed. And that's why we're here. We're very passionate about it, and I appreciate that you think that you need to do another study, great. And with all due respect to Mr. Jones did do a traffic study on Spencer in 2017 before the businesses opened up, before the condo went in. We have a hotel going in. When that hotel goes in, you can't turn off of Riddell into it. You have to turn off of Spencer. It's just going to get worse, and we're here representing 700 people who are very passionate and want their children and their community to be safe.
Right.
And if they go the other way around, then you're pushing them all to come back through Beeline.
And back down Spencer.
Right in front of the school where we're trying
Right.
to keep our kids safe.
Of course.
So that's backwards.
Right. But I think if we talk about the fatality, correct me if I'm wrong, but that person pulled into oncoming traffic, right? I mean, bad judgments happen in traffic all the time, and
Absolutely, but you have an intersection that if you look at the study, if you look at the PowerPoint presentation that we brought with you, there have been numerous accidents at that corner since it opened up in 2017.
I drive a big pickup and I have difficulty seeing when I'm turning left down the street. And I live 3 houses, like for to pass Winterington, I live 3 houses down and I drive a big pickup and I can't see to come around the corner around cars. It's a blind spot.
And I think it's the town has the ability to fix it. The town has the ability to protect their citizens. That's what we're here for. You have over 700 people who signed a petition that want their people, their families safe.
Right.
And Spencer, I know that you said that we don't have enough traffic on it. You try and cross that street to get your mail, and I can't back out of my driveway.
right.
I have children. My children are teenagers. I don't worry so much about my kids, but there's other people here with us tonight that have little children.
Right.
We had a police officer that lived on our street, an OPS officer, and also an EMS driver who sold their house because they had small children and they didn't feel it was safe living on Spencer Avenue anymore. If you have people moving out of the neighborhood because they don't feel it's safe, then there really is a problem. We're here trying to protect the citizens.
Right. Now, there was a gentleman at the back there that wanted to speak. Sir, are you still interested? Could you come up and talk into the microphone here so the people at home can hear? Can we turn that microphone on, please? Thank you.
Okay.
Your name, sir, and
Sure.
where do you live?
I live in Settlers Creek, and my name's Chris Crane. So it was just more of a comment about the study that we did, more for Mr. Jones. Again, in surveying all the neighborhood and talking about the corner at, the misconfigured corner at Spencer and Riddell, one of the glowing comments from the community is the time of day. You actually stare directly into the sun, which is setting in the west. And so if we do a traffic study in January, I'm not sure if the sun is as strong in January. If you do it at other times of the year and you stop at that corner and you're staring, you're gonna get you're staring right into the sun and trying to gauge whether there's another car or a truck. And I'm just not sure if that was factored into the previous studies. So most of the people who signed the petition brought up, it's also the location, because you're actually on you're on a hill, so you're kind of going up there. If anyone's been on Riddell and Spencer, your car's already looking up, and you're kind of looking straight into the sun. So that's one of the main concerns that I don't know if it gets picked up in a traffic study, because it's counting population or demographics, how many cars are going through, but I don't know if it's actually interviewing to say, did you have to pull down a visor, put on sunglasses to navigate that corner when you're looking straight into the sun? I don't know. So I didn't want to lose that point, because we do traffic studies, but I don't know if they factor that in.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to clarify how that fatality happened, because it seems to be of interest. They were heading north on Riddell. They were trying to turn left onto Spencer. Again, you have to do the S. They were blocked. They turned and were hit. So that's what happened, and I think that's what everyone's describing, is this funky S-turn that you have to do, and the configuration of that intersection is why people are saying, hey, the advanced green would solve that. And just one other thing that Mr. Crane brought up, maybe I slightly disagree, but the lighting at Spencer, so the sun beating down, when you turn at Spencer, yes, it's a factor, but when you get up one more set to Alder, it's a big problem. So you're on the hill, you're trying to turn left, and I guess it's just the incline that Mr. Crane described, but you're on a hill, and for whatever reason, that sun is beating at you on that intersection. So there are really two different stories here about why the folks in that area want the advanced greens. But I just wanted to add that for clarification, and I thank you for your question, Your Worship.
Okay, so if we can wrap this up maybe with the request. Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
I apologize.
I will catch you as well, sir. Thank you.
So the other issue that we're running into as well with the traffic on the road, and I think adding stop signs might help, is we have trucks. We have 18-wheelers coming down Spencer. We have gravel trucks on a regular basis because they're stopping at McDonald's to get food. They can park on Spencer, so they'll come down Beeline onto Spencer. If there's stop signs or there's other measures to slow down that traffic or to prevent them from coming that way, we're not going to have that same truck traffic, which I know is not supposed to be on the street. I realize it's a community safety zone, and if you don't believe me, I've got pictures. I'm happy to share them with you. I'm out there every single day walking my dog. I walk at 5:30 in the morning, I walk at 4:30, and I walk at 8 o'clock at night. I can tell you how many cars are there. I can tell you how fast they're going. I have a radar app on my phone. I'm checking constantly. People are not doing 40. Yes, you might think I'm some crazy lady, but I would like to make sure that the citizens of our neighborhood and our community are safe. I'm a school teacher. That's what I do. I care about children. I care about the residents of our community.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, did you want to come up and please state your name?
Thank you. My name's Nunzio Carnevale, and I live at 51 Glengarry. I moved into this wonderful city about 3 years ago. And as I started to get the geography in place, Glengarry is just west and just north of Spencer. So I decided to keep on working for a couple of years and constantly made this left turn every night as I came home from Mississauga. I said, I have to do something about this. This is within a few months of me moving in. I came and I spoke over 3 years ago to one of your staff members in your traffic department. He acknowledged the same concern that I have, the other 700 people that signed, and a number of councillors here. And possibly if there are councillors who are not aware of this major issue, I suggest that maybe you sample a couple of peak times for your own eyes to see what is going on. The statistical information that is taken care of by these traffic studies are numbers based on criteria. They are not looking at times on the issue of the design problems as it is in this case. Everyone is concerned. So within the year, we did have this wonderful gentleman that lived in a neighborhood for a number of years lose his life. My daughter-in-law, who takes that route every single day, does not make a left turn. So the statements about doing other things to take care of safety, I don't think taxpayers should be doing that. If there are issues that are with safety concerns, leave the number cruncher aside and work with common sense. It's a safety issue. So hopefully, as all of the members are here, you're in agreement as councillors who represent us as citizens. See for your own eyes, and I know that common sense at the end will prevail, and that the concerns of 700 plus members, I was one of the people that went on knocking on doors, and the concerns were genuine concerns. So I just wanted to have my piece of the few words, and I hope that, again, your work will be undertaken and positive for some good outcomes for the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, so if we can wrap this up, I guess, with an ask of town staff. Well, I've got a third thing to add on to this, but the first one was, Mr. Jones, if you could come up with costs of implementation of left-hand turn signalization at Alder and Spencer, and also a cost for a consultant to provide a review of the geometry of that intersection for our next council meeting. And the third ask I have for you, I'm quite familiar with Cambridge, and I used to work in that area. There's an intersection at Franklin and Pine Bush, and it's a very busy, and it was a lighted intersection, and in the last year or so, it's been converted to a roundabout. So your friends at the City of Cambridge, or perhaps, what county is it? Is it, I don't know. What, is it Waterloo? So I'm not sure if that intersection is a Waterloo or whether it's City of Cambridge, but it was a busy intersection, been converted to roundabout. So they would have some specific expenses that they incurred in the last year to convert that intersection. Be very interested if you could reach out to them. Yes, sir.
If you could include the name of that intersection in the motion, that would be helpful.
Yeah, Franklin Road and Pine Bush Road.
Okay, perfect.
Franklin Boulevard and Pine Bush Road. Yeah.
The other issue is that in terms of timing, it's not something we'd be able to get for the next meeting of council. If we're looking at bringing back a cost to undertake that analysis, we have to go through our procurement process. So perhaps if we could just say as soon as possible, and we'll move it forward as quickly as we can.
Which costs, sorry, would you have to go through?
We're looking to hire a consultant to evaluate the geometry of the intersection, correct?
Right, okay. But the costing, rough costing on the lighting of the advanced green, you can pull that together for next meeting?
Yes,
and making this phone call about the cost of the roundabout conversion?
Certainly.
Awesome. Okay, is that satisfactory, council members? Okay, so that would be a motion, my motion. Maybe Mr. Taylor would like to second that? Is that good? Do you want to speak again? Go ahead, sir.
I would just like to say one last thing before we're done here, and it's not necessarily related to what you're going to do, but just if I could, a bit of a tribute, and that is, there was a large group of people that worked on this project, and you can see the passion of the group. And on October 20th, one of the members who was actively canvassing and a part of this passed away, very young man, and his name was Brian Terp. He lived on Alder Street, and I just wanted to offer condolences to him and his family and say, hey, we're all here continuing on your good work, and I'd just like to thank him publicly. So,
very good.
Rest in peace.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? Thank you. And thank you to the delegation.
You have 700 people.
I think Councillor Post did mention that there's lots of other parts of town. We're looking at it. I think the term that Mr. Jones used was holistically on things, but there is a requirement for us to look at that. Yes, but stop signs do not slow traffic down. They don't. Speed bumps are an issue with emergency vehicles, so we're not 100% behind speed bumps, I don't think. But at this point, that's the motion that we've passed tonight. So, okay.
So will you be doing anything with this in the future, or do we need to come back and have it put on the agendas? I understand you're going to do it as a
Next meeting, Mr. Jones is going to report to us, and I would imagine there'll be some sort of action taken at the next meeting. Okay.
okay.
Councillor Post.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I just want to address the stop sign piece very quickly before you guys go on. I know that we wanted to move on to the next piece, but as part of our strategic planning and strategic priorities of council, one of the things that was moved forward by this council was safety in our communities. So I would like to move forward in addition on to that motion that we've just passed that would ask for some other recommendations other than stop signs that come back from the Infrastructure Services Department as soon as possible. That talk about different ways that we can enhance the safety of the communities where there is visual issues, like you're saying, because that was the issue at College and Fieldgate as well. It wasn't just a traffic calming issue, it was also a visibility issue at that intersection where residents didn't feel that it was safe to come off of Fieldgate onto College, and I feel like that's the same thing that you're talking about off of Abbey onto Spencer. So if stop signs aren't the right answer, Mr. Jones, I would love to hear some other alternative options options of what we could put in there that would fall within the compliancy of the Ontario Traffic Manual and would satisfy that part of the engineering side of things, but will also take care of the community safety portion, which is what's important to me. So I would like to move that forward if I could have a seconder for that motion.
Okay. We have a seconder over here. Councillor Taylor?
Your worship, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Post, for that. I would just like to let everybody in the town of Orangeville know that when this is done, we will be going on to college. We're not done there. When we're done at college, we'll be going on to Zina, and we'll deal with whatever other project comes along as well. Like, it is a massive concern for people in the town, and Councillor Post has been very supportive of me as we've gone through this, and I just think it's a big thing for all of us, and I've had private discussions with each of you, and I know that you're aligned to what we're saying here, but those are the problem spots that we need to get at quickly, all three of them.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, and one more thing I just wanted to add is, you know, there's talk about, you know, rogue people coming along Spencer and, you know, interlopers. I would venture to say that most of the people that are speeding on Spencer are your neighbors, right?
No, they're not.
Oh, really?
You read the data from the police? Most of them are not from our neighborhood. There are a few from our neighborhood.
The ones that have been caught.
The ones who have been caught, yes,
Okay.
absolutely, 100%.
Okay. Well, the police can smell out-of-towners, I think, so. Okay, ladies, look, I don't want to, you know, belittle what you said. We accept, we understand. We're all aligned here. I think that we want to make your neighborhood very safe and quickly, and we'll be talking again seriously about this at our next meeting, okay?
Next Monday?
It won't be till January, yeah. Okay, great, thank you. And we have an amendment, seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh, to add some further discussion about safety and traffic calming to Mr. Jones' ask. All in favor? Thank you. All right. Now we're on to staff reports. Ms. Said, are you going to give us a recap? Oh, maybe not. Oh. Okay. So you're planning to give us an update from where we were last meeting? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yes, carry on. Thank you.
To Your Worship, to Council. So tonight's presentation is essentially looking at some of the changes that Council gave us direction on December 9th and taking those changes and looking at it from two different perspectives. So the table in front of you sort of captures some of the changes from December 9th presentation or council direction. Now, this particular table does not include projects that are fully reserve funded. However, we have made adjustment for those projects in our overall budget document. So on the capital project side, we are looking at a reduction of 230,000. So very quick review, firewall refresh, which is actually an OPS project. You are looking at a reduction of $60,000 toward the tax levy. Digital sign for visitor information center is $108,000. Tony Rose interior signage is $7,000. Tony Rose exterior furniture is $5,500. Tony Rose concrete pad and fencing is $6,000. Alder lifeguard chairs is $16,200. Outdoor Lions Pool is $36,000. BMX pump track is $36,000. So overall is $230,000 on the decreased side for the tax levy. Council also asked us to increase the funding for the Broadway Brick project that adds $78,000 to the tax levy. So overall, if you take the reduction as well as the addition on the capital side of things, you are looking at more toward the right-hand side of your screen, $151,000 net reduction from the capital sides. Moving on to the operating side, additional resources for records management is $70,000. And as you heard earlier tonight, the CVC levy is seeing a slight reduction. So for the tax levy portion, because the other portion is funded through wastewater, so for the tax levy portion, you're seeing a reduction of $2,300. So again, consolidated levy impact for all the changes that council asked us to make from the December 9th meeting, you are looking at $84,190. So what I would ask council to make note of these three numbers. On the capital side, net levy decrease is $151,800. On the operating side, net levy increase is $67,610. So consolidated levy impact, we're looking at $84,190. So now we're going to look at what this means from two different perspectives. So as far as scenario one is concerned, when we came back on December 9th, we asked council to approve a consolidated net levy requirement of $36.1 million, which equates to 1.5%. With the $84,000 overall reduction, we're looking at a 0.23% reduction. So overall, if we were to factor that in, we're looking at a little over $36 million, or 1.27% in overall levy requirement. Lion's share of that is coming out of our capital budget. So what are the risks with reducing the $2.6 million levy requirement that council actually has given us direction back in August and asking us to maintain that, which is essentially the 2019 envelope. In that same report, council asked us to maintain that level until 2029. So reducing that $2.6 million capital net levy envelope means that we have to increase that amount when we come to the 2021 budget deliberation. It further means that it will add to our already infrastructure deficit of $5.35 million. As council is aware, that deficit number is coming out of our 2016 asset management plan. In my previous presentation, one of the concerns that I shared with council is that when we go through our next iteration of asset management plan, there's a likelihood that that infrastructure deficit number will actually grow. So once again, the risk associated with reducing our $2.6 million net levy requirement from our capital budget is that A, this will be a proportionate increase for the 2021 budget for the capital funding, as well as it'll add to our already $5.35 million infrastructure deficit. So this is scenario two. So again, the original ask was $36.1 million, which is 1.5. We're asking council, even with the changes proposed and the changes made since December 9th meeting, that we stay at that level at 1.5. But how are we mitigating some of the changes that council asked us to do? So in this particular scenario, we are maintaining our net levy capital envelope at $2.6 million. But what we're doing is we're reallocating the net of $151,000 savings and putting it to a tax rate stabilization reserves that we already have in existence. We're funding the increase on the operating side from the same reserve. So overall, this reserve will have an allocation increase of $84,000, $190. So essentially what we're doing is, so this scenario, which in the next slide, you will see is the scenario and the recommendation that staff is proposing tonight. In this scenario, we are maintaining our capital envelope as is, maintaining to the level of 2019, as council directed us back in August. This particular scenario also takes into account all the changes that council asked us to come forward with in the December 9th meeting, as well as we are maintaining the overall integrity of our budget as presented. So tonight, what we are recommending on the self-funded side, that the 2020 waterworks budget totaling a little over 7.5 million be approved, that the 2020 wastewater budget totaling a little over 6.4 million be approved. On the tax-funded side, as I have already walked you through, there are two options. Option one, that the 2020 consolidated net levy totaling 36.1 million or 1.5 be approved, or option two, that the 2020 consolidated net levy totaling 36 million or 1.27 be approved. So these are the recommendations for tonight. I've already walked you through the risks associated with option two. At this point in time, I will end my presentation and open the floor for questioning. Back to you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you very much, Madam Treasurer, for the update and the clarification. Certainly a lot of information for us to digest. As you may recall, at our December 9th meeting, I had asked a particular question to get some clarification on, and this was pertaining to the public relations as well as the events and whatever other part of that particular line item is titled as. Were you able to provide some information for us tonight?
Just allow me 1 minute to bring this up on the screen.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. I'm digging the backbeat here. Okay, sorry, carry on. I'm sorry, I was waiting.
Okay,
Yes,
Your Worship,
thank you.
to Councillor Andrews. Now, I want to start with the overall impact, and this is an Excel worksheet, so I'm going to go up and down a little bit. So the overall impact is year over, like 2020 over 2019 is only $10,000, but you wanted to see a little bit more breakdown of what this entails. So the proposed budget for council for the public relation promotions and events, we're looking at $34,100. 2,000 of that is advertising and promotion. Public relations is about 11,500. Delegation, receptions, retirement, I'm assuming these are different events. That's 10,500. Council special events, unspecified public relations, 10,000. So again, some of these line items are essentially sort of a blanket line item, so to speak, for lack of a better terminology. And you will see that being repeated under different section of our of the budget. So under committee, and I'm not going to go through this entire list. It's up there for your perusal. Administration has public relation. That's 2,300. That's not a big ticketed item. Clerk has advertising and promotion for 1,500. Communication, which is the larger of, it's one of the largest bucket. So for that, public relation again is 3,000. Town page ads is 52,000. Website development and maintenance is closer to 10,000. Tree sculpture, brochure is 3,000. Tree sculpture investment, I believe, is 5,000. So the overall communication bucket is a little over 73,000. Human resources, again, advertising and promotion. Advertising promotion line you will see under pretty much all division is 3,000. Staff recognition events is 22. Corporate allocation is the corporate-wide. Again, there's nothing for that. Proposed in 2020. Finance, advertising and promotion is $1,000 economic development, again, one of the largest buckets. We're looking at 80,000. Again, I'm not going to go through the entire list. Advertising and promotion is 24,000. It's one of the key line item. Tourism development and marketing is 18. Cultural development and marketing is 14,000. So you get a sense of how some of these.
Very much so. I can
Yeah.
see that, the detail that you have gone and through your staff have gone to present this to council tonight is, again, very much appreciated. And you use the term buckets. Again, I guess part of the exercise is that we always like to empty the bucket a little bit. And if there's, a way that we can do so, but I also respect the fact departmentally, there are reasons why this exists. And again, I think that what we've been trying to do as a council has been looking at all the different items and seeing if there was a way that we could, lessen the impact on the levy itself. But thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you to you, to the Treasurer. On the revised pages 174 under Facilities and Parks, I see that the outdoor Lions Pool joint venture is still showing up as 50,000. I had emailed you about that today. Does that change the overall picture? Because I know page 16 of the agenda indicated that was to be reduced to 14,000. Is that going to change the overall?
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Sherwood. So given the time constraint between December 9th presentation and tonight's presentation, we focused on pages in our document that are more high level. So you may still be seeing projects that are taken out of the budget, but the detailed project sheets are still part of the budget document. So once the budget is approved, that's one of the things that we'll go back and clean up, because there's 318 pages. So it really requires renumbering and so on and so forth. So at this point in time,
I'm referring actually specifically to page 174, not the actual backup paperwork, but if 174, it's still part of the total levy impact for 962,500. But if you look up under the Lions joint venture, I've noticed in all the other summary pages, you did update it with the council direction, but that one's still sitting at 14. And I would assume that if you change that to the 14,000, that would reduce the levy, and that's what I'm saying, would it reduce your overall 1.27?
okay,
Sorry
my
about
apologies.
that.
I'm just trying to listen to
I knew what you meant about the
Yeah,
backup pages. That wasn't what I was worried about.
So again, through your worship, to Councillor Sherwood. So on page 174, and council have received
The revised.
so 36,000 is showing as other.
Oh,
That's the donation. That's toward the bottom of the page, right above the orange line. So that's the donation, and the rest of it is 14,000, I believe, is funded through tax levy.
okay. Thank you
Okay.
for that clarification.
All right, thank you.
Is there anybody else in the queue, or can I still?
Carry
Can I
on
still
one
go?
more. Yeah, you've got.
One more? Okay, so we're going to go back to the corporate service allocation, the revised page 23. And one of the things that, I had asked, or council had asked, was reviewing the tax write-offs to reduce because of the cancellation of the vacancy rebate. And my first thought was that I would have liked to have seen this reduced by 50,000, 75,000 potentially. But I do want to ask you a question, and I need clarification. I think we need clarification from the county. They said it was going to be eliminated as of 2020. Does that mean that in 2020, we will still have to rebate for the 2019? Have you got clarification from the Treasurer for that?
Madam
Through
Treasurer.
your worship, to Councillor Sherwood, yes, we did. So I believe we received an email today getting direction from the county treasurer. So as you have correctly mentioned, the rebate program will be eliminated effective 2020. And as you're already aware from your previous job, that there's a one-year lag with vacancy rebates, so we will be issuing 2019 rebate in 2020.
Yes, and I thank you very much for clarification, because that sparked to me after I sent the email. I thought, you know what, I don't know specifically if they said eliminating the 2019s. So I look forward to seeing a reduction in that next year. I know that it is a reassessment year next year, and typically and historically there always has been assessment reductions. But one of the things I was hoping that we could get is some type of actuals to see, because last year, this got increased from 400,000 to 500,000 based on outstanding ARB decisions. What I was wondering is if I know right now you're still running on year-to-date and still clearing up all of those, and I understand those haven't been audited, but if there's still outstanding ARBs, and I know the courts take a very long time, and you haven't used up this 500,000, because like I said, you went up last year 400 to 500 based on what was sitting in the courts. Is there any way of putting that money in the reserves to pay for those that get granted for next year? So in other words, if you only use 300,000, can that 200,000 be put away to deal with the 2020 successful appeals?
Madam Treasurer.
Thank you, Your Worship. So through Your Worship to Councillor Sherwood. So you're absolutely correct. We are looking at some outstanding ARB files, which we cannot get into the discussion right now. One of the things that I'm hoping to do in the new year is bring sort of a holistic report back to Council and kind of give you an idea where some of our assessment risks are at. Specifically answering your question right now, absolutely. If we do not spend the entire budgeted amount of $500,000 that's sitting there, any overages will or can be parked in a reserve account, most likely either a tax stabilization or a general reserve. But based on what I have seen and based on number of files that are outstanding, I would say that the way we have budgeted is quite on the conservative side of things.
Yes, thank you very much.
All set. Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarification, staff is recommending option 1.
Could you put option 1 and 2 back on your screen, please? Right, there you go.
Right. So I'd like to make a motion that we accept option 1. If I have a seconder.
I'll second that. We have comments? Okay, let's go with Councillor Sherwood. Sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Sherwood.
So going back to the presentation, we never had an opportunity our last minute to go back and review the items that were being one-time relieved. So you're asking us to approve the budget when we haven't completely finished through the budget yet. We have not, correct, Madam Treasurer, we did not complete that where we went through the one-time removals and asks.
I thought that was part of the recap that was just delivered to us.
But we did not go through them. Page 9. So we didn't get to that part of the budget last week.
Okay.
And, oh, sorry.
Madam Treasurer.
Through your worship to Councillor Sherwood and to the rest of Council, my understanding would be on December 9th, Council did go through various sections approving capital and operating budget. So the sections that you're referring to, these are the summary of items that are coming out of different divisions of the operating. So that's kind of a different way of looking at it. By way of approving different divisions of the operating, Council essentially has approved the sections that you're questioning right now.
So then I do have a further question with regard to that.
Okay.
If we approved it last time on page 9, or page... page 12, There's an HR coordinator that's half-time, but yet nothing was mentioned to us that in the new revised here, it's full-time. It's changed to 1. But yet, nothing was brought to our attention about that. So in the revised paper,
That was, I believe that was the add-on that we gave to the clerk's department, was it not?
no, this is for HR, sir.
Oh, okay. On page 12, which line item are you talking about?
Page 12, the Human
Item-
Resource Coordinator
item 12?
full-time went from the original document of 0.5 to 1.
Okay.
That's the original.
It doesn't look like there's any monetary value, but can you explain to me, is it a 0.5 or is it a full-time?
Madam Treasurer?
Through your
Clarify
worship to
this?
Councillor Sherwood, it's still, okay, that, and I'm looking at, the document that I'm looking at, I don't see any changes, but I'm not questioning if you're looking at something that looks different. To me,
Look
if
at
the-
your, look at the original one.
Yes,
and then
we
look
are
at the
actually
revised
looking.
one, right?
Yeah, we are actually looking.
But the monetary didn't change.
No, the monetary didn't change. So from my vantage point, I would say that that probably was a clerical error in terms of the FTE. But given that the monetary amount didn't change, so that has remained unchanged overall.
I would assume with the monetary amount, that does mean it's a 1, that it is a full-time.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ms. McKinney.
Thank you, through your worship, through to the councillor. Looking at this revised list, I would suggest that what should have happened, to the point on the clerical error, is the 1-year contract to assist with bylaw should be 1 temporarily, and then 0.5 for the human resources coordinator is unchanged. The system here does not have a full-time temporary complement, so HR reflects them as FTEs. So we, last week, were asked to add in $70,000 for a 1-year contract for one person to come in and assist with the bylaw creation and speeding that up. That would be 1.0, and then that would be temporary for 1 year, and then the HR coordinator is 0.5.
All right.
Okay.
Does that clarify or not?
No.
Oh,
But anyhow,
So the HR coordinator is 0.5, and the 1 should be beside 1-year contract to assist with bylaws.
yeah.
okay.
All right, let's, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. What did we decide to do on the fire department then? So I don't think, I know, I just got a sigh from Councillor Post. But I don't think we actually aligned on what we were going to do with that. We aligned that we were going to talk about that this week and that there's a motion to approve a budget that's got that in. And my secondary question to that would be, and I think it's just for council, I believe that when we talked about that last year, it was $8 million. When I look at it this year, it's $10 million, and yet we've got a motion on the floor to approve it, and we haven't had the conversation about it. So, you know, my wish again would be is, candidly, I feel like we bit off a lot this year. I would just like it moved. I'd like to talk about it next year. I'd like it removed from the budget this year and everything chunked up a year. And with the work that, by the way, my compliments to you, Councillor Sherwood, on the work that you've done on the budget. But if we could do that, I'd be pleased to approve the budget.
Right. Friendly amendment. Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know where to start. I had a couple smaller items I wanted to discuss before we got to the numbers as well. So I don't know what we do with the motion on the floor. I'm not ready to approve it until we have a few more of those conversations. I'm actually, like Councillor Taylor, a little surprised that more people didn't bring up some more issues. So I don't know what order you want to go in or otherwise, whether that motion falls away, but okay. Okay, I'll go through a couple of my, what will appear to be very minor items compared to a fire hall, but it was dangerous to give me another week with this document, so anyway. The first one I wanted to bring up, and last time I promised, so the OSBC roof, I'm obviously advocating for a metal roof for durability reasons. I think between Mr. Osmond and myself, we've come up with a more refined number. So again, we can put it forward. I think the budget for a metal roof is more in the neighborhood of 45,000. Currently 15 is budgeted for asphalt. My recommendation would be to move that to 45,000, and if the bids for a metal roof come in over that, we default back to asphalt. So basically saying if we can get it for that price, which I think is much more in the neighborhood, and I'll let Mr. Osmond speak to it as well, but that's proposal number one.
What's the lifespan of a steel roof?
Lifetime on the building. So I believe the warranty would be in the 25-year, but again, from a durability perspective, I think you wouldn't be replacing it short of a major catastrophe. So from a life cycle perspective, again, I'm in support of that investment. One minor item, but perhaps I'll let Mr. Osmond comment if you have anything to add.
Okay, Mr. Osmond.
Your Worship, first of all, the pricing, we didn't do a procurement process for the roofing, and we just use our prices we'd use on Diane Drive this year. We did half the roof. To do a full roof would cost us somewhere between $35,000 and $45,000. The issue we have, and that's what we're saying, well, if we take a stab at $45,000 and hope for the best, the issue we have is that the roof at OSPCA is a little bit more complicated. It's not a straight peak roof. It's got several peaks in the roof, and that's why we add a little bit more of a complication. The idea of just going out in the marketplace and see what comes back, if we get it for $45,000, that's great. The fallback position could be asphalt shingles. We understand 100% that a metal roof would give us longevity. Minimum lifetime on a metal roof is somewhere around 50 years, actually. So it makes a lot of sense if we have the money to do that.
Okay. Let's go with Councillor Sherwood.
I just wanted to ask a question about the metal roof, and perhaps you can answer it, Councillor Peters, if not me, Osmond. But I was under the impression that in the situation of a fire, it's actually worse to have those types of roofs, because in a regular structure, if a fire starts, say, in the kitchen, it will go up and right out through the ceiling, and then things will go from there. But I was told with a roof, and maybe you can help me, with a metal roof, it keeps everything in and then actually makes the damage worse. It will spread it within because this metal roof is containing everything within. I'm not an expert, but maybe Mr. Osmond, We need the chief. We need a chief. Anyone know where there's a fire chief?
Call the Duke. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, yeah. Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes, thank you, Worship. And Shane didn't know answering there. You're correct in one way, but most of these roofs do have vents and stuff like that would burn out just as quick as a normal roof. So it would really make no difference.
Okay. Did you have another question or not? No? Councillor Sherwood? Okay. Councillor Peters?
Should I move on, or should
Yes,
we
please
vote on one thing before we move on? I'm seeing the clerk perhaps dealing with these issues in sequence, or? I think so, as a one-time item.
On your roof amendment?
Right.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
I can give you a minute so long as we cycle back to it.
It certainly would make sense if it's a 50-year roof, that there's actually going to be cost savings for the town going forward, right? Because 20 years from now, that asphalt roof's going to be
Right.
$30,000.
It's the long-term
So,
investment sort of strategy, and I'm not saying it's for everyone, and it comes with a dollar value.
Okay.
But
So
it's on the floor, so I thought.
I like your thinking, Councillor Peters. I would support that. So, shall we vote on that one item? Just a sec, Deputy Mayor McIntosh, want to weigh in on that?
Thank you, Worship. Just my thoughts. Something like that, instead of holding up the whole budget, if it come time to do the roof and we decide we want to go metal, we've now put enough reserves away that we could take some reserve money out of that to go to metal if that was something we chose to do at the time. I don't know how many small items we've got, but it sounds like we could be here till 11 o'clock if we're going to keep doing every little item. But I'm fine with that.
How many items do you have? Just one more. Okay. let's hear your other item, Councillor Peters, before we.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you to the Deputy Mayor, I think the trouble is that if we approve 15 and an asphalt roof, it will go through that process without a second consideration, without giving formal direction to staff on that procurement process. So I'll leave it at that. The other issue, not to bug you again, but it's quite minor, and it comes back to Councillor Taylor's favorite topic, the recycling bins. We talked last time about how they're only 2-stream. I'd like them to go 3-stream. Also, there are 2 locations that aren't included in the current plan right now, which are the library and the visitor center. I think if we're going to outfit town buildings with these receptacles, and we should follow the same sort of waste management strategy in all of our facilities. So I'd like to see them added to those 2 locations and upgraded to a 3-stream separation so that, again, the town can show leadership in diversion and everyone who uses the buildings can participate in that level of waste management.
Could we ask either Mr. Osborne or Mr. Jones, town staff has a capability of dealing with those 3 streams? I mean,
Your Worship, what we'd have to do is speak to the county, but I would do that. Right now, I mean, we do have some facilities that take it to the 3 streams, but none of our bigger buildings do, and if we do, we just speak to the county and how to get that to them, and then we'll pick it up.
right, okay. Very good. What was the cost of this? Mr. Osmond, do you know roughly the cost of conversion from 2-stream to 3-stream on these? No.
No, Your Worship, that's something I have to do and do the numbers on and talk to the county about.
Right. Okay. Councillor Peters.
Sorry, I guess just to round it out, I believe it was around $4,000 to $5,000 per facility. So if we were going to add 2 facilities, perhaps that'd be a $10,000 item. Again, I don't know. Visitor center smaller, library smaller. Perhaps we need fewer receptacles in those areas. But perhaps if 10 was added, that could cover perhaps the upgrade and the additional facilities.
Okay, following Deputy Mayor McIntosh's line of thinking, we've got some reserve money. If we vote the 1.5%, there is some money in reserves dropping out of that, and we could use that to fund what you've just suggested here. Was that?
Not worried about how, just trying to get it.
Right. Okay, so let's keep your thoughts, and let's move on to Councillor Taylor for another thought. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just real brief. I wish we wouldn't do that. All due respect, Deputy Mayor. I get so anxious when we keep going back to the reserves. I like to kind of whittle my money away and know that I have it and know what I'm going to spend, and I'm done with it. I'd rather just, let's be very specific. And reserves are meant for a rainy day, right? They're not meant to kind of be a budget pad or what have you. And I'd prefer that we did that. I'm a very rigid financial person. I don't have the knowledge that my good friend Councillor Sherwood does, but I've certainly led my life with a tally and a sharp pencil. So I would feel much better if we were very specific through this and settled it up now, if we could.
Okay, well, where does that leave us? Councillor Post, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I agree with Councillor Taylor on that piece, and with that, I would ask Ms. Syed, if we went ahead and approved option 1 with the $36,137,000, with the allocation that the $30,000 for the roof be taken into account with that, and that the $10,000 for the receptacles be taken into account for that, would that balance out then that the additional $40,300 or whatever it was goes into the reserves? Originally, you had 80-something thousand going into reserves, 84,000. I don't have the slide in front of me, but would that make sense that we could still approve that dollar amount and just specify that those items be changed?
Madam Treasurer.
Through your worship, to Councillor Post, yes. My answer would be yes.
Okay, so we're back to Deputy Mayor McIntosh's motion that we go to 1.5% with monies dropping into the reserve. Now that's been eroded by 2 suggestions from Councillor Peters of roughly $40,000. Any other friendly amendments or changes that councillors? I'm sorry? Councillor Taylor.
Your worship, thank you. We still have not aligned on the big budget item that's in this thing, and I've said my piece. I think Deputy Mayor said his piece, and I would say there's 5 of you that haven't, so I think we need to align on what that would be, and if we could vote to just move back. I mean, Deputy Chief Richardson and the Chief Morden, I'm not suggesting by any stretch I'm not in favor of a fire hall. I'd just like to delay for 1 year, given everything that we've got on our plate. That's it.
However, there was some conversation today with CVC. It's a hot topic right now, and Mr. Osmond, can you speak to that? Is there any opportunity for CVC to approve? Mr. Osmond?
Your worship, if we could do this way, the actual construction for the fire station, should it go forward, won't start till 2021, which pushes it out a year. The issue I have right now, the concern I have right now, is that, well, first of all, we are dealing with the floodplain issue. Quite frankly, I don't feel positive about that. However, there's a couple options that we're also considering right now, and just discussions going on with potential parcels of land. So my concern would be that if we have enough flexibility to negotiate if something comes up with land, and B, it would be that we would go ahead and start a design if that were the case, and we get into the actual, if you would, the construction dollars and that kind of thing into 2021-22. This thing will take at least 2 years, so you're looking at 21-22, possibly in 23 to finish. So really want to look at funding in the year 2020 with land and design.
Right.
Which would be, I'm not sure what that dollar figure would be. It would be less than probably $2 million.
Okay. Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can speak to that topic as well. I actually had a conversation with Deb Martin-Downs, as well as directors of permitting and infrastructure following the board meeting on Friday. So they're updating their floodplain models and analysis, which haven't been done since the 80s. So that's very positive news. They're much more advanced analyses at this point, as you can imagine. They're hoping that study will be done in March. They have funding for it. The dollars dry up essentially in March, and therefore that study has to be completed in March, giving us the remainder of 2020 to figure out what mitigation looks like or what it costs. If it's even possible. If it is possible, mitigation could go beyond the site. If you recall the graphic that was shown, and I'm testing your memory a little bit, but the fire station itself was in a medium risk zone, and it was actually, there's sort of a horseshoe around it of a much higher flooding zone. So again, not to forecast, but what could happen is that the station itself could be mitigated to some degree with stormwater management, but then we still have the problem of Dawson. And if Dawson is flooded, it doesn't matter if the trucks can get out of the driveway, they still have to traverse the road. And so we may be looking at culvert or bridge or other rehabilitation measures that may add up to more than the cost of a new station on a new parcel. So that's one scenario. Not saying that's the one it's going to be, I don't know. I haven't seen that study, but we'll have those answers in March, and we can start looking at engineering solutions for that site, or conversely, the study could show that they're not possible. So that's a bit of an update. Regarding the topic at hand, I think we need to start allocating that money, start getting a design on board. I think we have the opportunity with a very modest budget increase to take on a big chunk of that cost. I think the town has already been pushing this off for a little while. I don't want it to have to go to next term. I think some of us perhaps regret that it was pushed to this term, and I don't want to do that to the future firefighters and administration of the town. So I'm in favor of keeping it in the budget.
Right. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. One of the things that Councillor Taylor and I had both discovered is that from last year's capital budget to this year, that fire hall went from 8 million to 10 million. Is there any justification for the change of that, Mr. Osmond?
Your Worship, the funding for the fire station was over a 3-year period, and they factored $3 million and change of this, I guess, for each year. But then we're looking at potentially purchasing land And my only understanding is that that budget was adjusted to $10 million from last year. So it's a good question one needs to look at, because we're not sure what we're going to design, and it was just a factor of a D estimate, if you would, 20% either way.
Okay, so having said that, I am going to put my support with Councillor Taylor that I think this could maybe go on the shelf for another year.
Okay. Well, my thoughts are the $3 million, if we decide that we can, as Councillor Peters has mentioned, that there's some mitigation at the existing facility that allows us to design an addition there, that we can find that out perhaps in March. And if we don't have any money allocated to that, then that type of design work, it has to be put off until 2021. So for that reason, I think is a good reason to keep the money in the budget. I don't think we've actually voted here to spend $10 million on a fire hall, but there is a need to improve our fire building, and I wouldn't be opposed to having $3 million put aside this year, trusting that Mr. Osmond will be back to us in the spring or late spring with further information on this. So I guess to recap, we have a motion on the floor from Deputy Mayor McIntosh, which I had seconded. We had a friendly amendment, was that voted on, the friendly amendment? Okay. So the friendly amendment was to add on steel roof and also some additional receptacles for recycling, improved receptacles, and adding them to two facilities, roughly $10,000. That would be taken out of reserves. And I think we should vote on that, and then if that's defeated, then we have the $3 million question to go forward. Is that reasonable? The $40,000, we've got about roughly $80,000 of reserves that have been created through the budget process, and then 40,000 out of reserves, which would take 40,000 back into reserves.
So it's going on the tax rate?
It's coming off that differential.
Coming off the... Councillor Sherwood.
So just to be clear, if we're adding an extra 50,000, clear to the treasurer, this is being added to the tax levy?
No.
Okay, no. Through your worship to Councillor Sherwood, what I'm hearing is, and if you, let me go back to that slide. If you look at that slide, the scenario 2 where we keep our envelope as is, and the tax rate stabilization reserve will see an overall allocation of 84,000. My understanding would be the friendly amendment that Councillor Peters is proposing can be offset or funded through that synergy or savings that we have found.
Thank you.
So it's not adding to tax levy at all.
Mr. Brennan.
Your Worship, just to mention, to note, the financing for the fire hall was to be done through development charges and debt financing. So as we discussed the last meeting, this, if approved by council, this project has been on the books for a few years, since the fire master plan was done, actually. But if it's approved by council, it will allow staff through 2020 to do all the initial work. And as I said before to council, with regards to location, we have to find the location itself. Design, we would be coming back to council with the design. But if we're not going to spend $3 million in 2020, we're not going to get a loan for $3 million. The loan would reflect the amount of work that we can get done. And again, my only fear with some of these bigger projects is like many other projects. If we keep delaying it, it's going to cost us more and more. And so 5 years out is going to cost us a lot more than what it's going to cost in 2 years. And just for consideration of council.
Yeah, construction costs are not going down, that's for sure. Okay, so All right, one more time, Councillor Taylor, then we have to call a vote. Go ahead. I think.
I'm sorry, are we at Councillor Peters' vote? Because I can wait till after he's.
Yeah, I
we're
think,
done with this.
I think we're calling a vote here, right?
But we're only calling the vote on the Councillor Peters portion, right?
Including the $3 million loan.
Okay, then I'd like to
Okay.
speak to that then.
Okay, all right.
So
Can you light yourself up again there, please? Sorry, and I'll, go ahead, sir.
So to throw a complete bomb on this and just to expose myself to the town again, back to the police vote, one of the main things that I had issues with was debt. That's my issue here again. I'm fundamentally opposed to debt. I don't live my life that way. I don't think the town should live that way. So I'll just throw out something radical. I propose that we sell Humber lands. I know, look at the mayor, look at me like I'm
Well,
crazy, but I'm not going to vote for debt. So I'll vote for asset changes, but I'm not going to vote for debt.
Right.
And I understand the rationale, but
Right.
I'm not going to vote for it.
You have to remember, we did have a conversation with Madam Treasurer back a few weeks ago, talking about what is a reasonable debt-to-reserve ratio in a town, and it was a 1 to 2 roughly, we're 2 to 1, where we are in that range, so it's considered healthy for a municipality of our size to be where we are at in debt. We do have some other things percolating, as you know. We do have some assets to sell. So, yeah, I think that is a potential way to fund one of these major projects, for sure. You know, what do we do with it, though? I mean, to sell it without it being rezoned maybe is a problem, right? I mean, if it's sold as medium-density land, it's a lot more valuable. So there's a few things we have to consider on that front. But I think what I'd like to do is call the vote as it sits right now with the 3 million in. If it's defeated, then we have to have another recommendation. Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Oh, withdrawing his motion. Okay. All right. You need a break? Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call this meeting back to order. Mr. Brennan would like to make a statement, sir.
Your Worship, just to make a couple comments. A very good debate tonight. I just want to stress, we have assets that we have to maintain. And there's only certain ways for a municipality to fund, to get money to build or to repair some of these assets. The reality is that we get grants, but we can't base a budget on just grants. So we have a tax levy, which also builds our reserves. So tax levy, impact, reserves, and debt financing. What I'm hearing tonight from different individuals is that we don't want to touch either one of them in one case. We don't want to do debt financing, we don't want to increase our tax levy, and we don't want to deplete our reserves. That leaves staff in a bit of a challenge. I will propose to you that our treasurer has put forward a way for this town to move forward to address its infrastructure needs and the infrastructure gap. And that's done by means of what is finance, what is a tax levy, what is debt financing, and how do we maintain our reserves. And I think the treasurer has done a great job proposing how we can move forward by still building our reserves, by managing our debt, and by controlling our tax levy, but yet accomplishing what this council wants us to do, your priorities. And I think the budget that was presented addresses all of these concerns. I do understand some members will not like debt financing. I do know that some would not like depleting reserves. I'm sure that all of you do not like increasing tax levies too much. So I would ask council to consider that. I'm a strong believer the more that we delay some of these projects, and this fire hall has been on our books, in my opinion, too long without taking action, the more we delay, the more expensive it's going to become. So not that we would spend $3 million this year, but it may happen that we're working with our friends and our colleagues at Credit Valley Conservation that will come up with a design that works on the existing property. And maybe it doesn't. But we need to do that work to move it forward. With regards of, so that's my spill on financing and moving this budget forward. On the part of our former Humberlands off Veterans Way, staff will be bringing back a report to council in early the new year so that we figure out what we want to do with those lands. And, you know, is it an asset that we get rid of? Quite possible. But we'll bring back the appraisals that we have done in the past, how it fits into our planning, what we see the use of the lands to be, and we can move it forward from there. But just to be sure, not to be sure, but to be clarify, if we do cancel the fire hall this year, there is no impact whatsoever on this budget. And if we approve it, it won't be any changes to the tax levy and stuff on this budget this year in 2020.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I'll put my motion back on the floor.
Okay. Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think that the sticking point for this budget is coming down to the fire hall and the fact that this council as a whole has not had the opportunity to have a full, robust conversation about what we want to do moving forward with the fire hall. My suggestion would be, first of all, to second the Deputy Mayor's motion and maybe add on the contingency to satisfy the rest of council that no decisions about the fire hall or that $3 million be moved forward by the town staff without coming to council first. So I think that it's important that we earmark that money. I think we're setting ourselves up for disaster if we don't. But I think that any of those decisions can come to council before any money is actually spent or moved forward, but this way we're earmarking those funds. And I think that that will give us the opportunity as a council to have a better conversation about the fire hall and what our vision for that moving forward is in the future. But that will also give town staff the ability to move forward with this budget. I think that the Treasury Department has done an excellent job presenting, like Mr. Brennan said, a budget that's moving forward a lot of our initiatives at a very reasonable increase to our to our constituents. So I would second the Deputy Mayor's motion, making sure that it does have those changes that Councillor Peters has added on with the $30,000 for the OSPCA roof and the $10,000 for the receptacles, and that the $44,000 go into the tax stabilization fund. So I would happily second that motion.
Leaving the $3 million in with the proviso that staff comes back with recommendation. Okay, so that's Deputy Mayor McIntosh's motion, seconded by Councillor Post. Any further commentary there? Let's call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, Councillor Taylor's opposed. All right. As we move forward now, we've got some happy stuff. Hey, soapbox derby. No, is that right? I'm sorry. Yes. Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the clerk, do we also need to make a motion about the five-year budgets in principle? And if so, I'll move that.
Okay, my apologies. So 9.1, we have a recommendation that the 2020 capital budget in the amount of $36,137,361 be approved, and that the 21 to 29 capital budget forecast be approved in principle. So let's have another motion on that. And Councillor Peters, would you second that motion? You want to? Go ahead.
Thanks. I was just going to move the forecasts be approved because I'm not sure if we know the precise dollar amount. Because I believe the number you quoted was the levy, not necessarily the capital or the operating. Is that correct through you to the treasurer?
That's right.
Okay.
Capital.
So my understanding would be that the actual amounts for 2020 have been taken care of in the Deputy Mayor's motion, and then I would move the forecasts for operating and capital be approved in principle as its own separate motion.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Taylor. Very good. Okay, operating budget. Can we, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think there was a request with respect to just the approval of the waterworks and wastewater budget.
Okay. Can you pull that up on the screen there? You had it there? I'm sorry. Right. Can you go back one slide there? There we go. So you want a motion to approve the waterworks and wastewater budgets as noted here? Can we have a motion? Councillor Post, second by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? All right. So moving on to operating, is there any further comment? I thought we covered off operating last meeting. I'm sorry, go ahead, Madam Treasurer.
Your Worship, I believe what we presented on our recommendation is consolidated, so I think
it's consolidated. Okay.
Yeah, so it's operating plus capital.
Right.
And I believe Councillor Peters' motion is to approve projected budget in principle.
Which we did. Okay, so does that mean we can jump over to soapbox derby now? Okay, good. All right. Okay, so 9.3, thank you, Madam Treasurer and Deputy Treasurer. Moving on to 9.3, we have a recommendation that the report CMS RE 2019-05 titled Soapbox Derby be received, and that the town partner and provide in-kind support to a not-for-profit group or service club that is willing to host and organize a soapbox derby. Councillor Andrews.
Yes. Thank you very much, Your Worship. And again, I presume this would be through to Mr. Osmond, as Mr. Osmond and Ms. Doherty were responsible for this. Again, I'm most appreciative of the report, and I think my fellow councillors at least have an understanding of what's happening around, be that the province, across the country. I feel that that some of the data here really provides some accuracy. Having been to the Perry Sound event, again, it's amazing how enthusiasm with those of the organizers tell you, what is going on, and then, the reality of the survey tells you something else. But having said that, it's, I think, very important that we do partner with a community group. I would be more than pleased to help out in some way, but I think that this really helps us as a council understand the process. And so if we don't have a community group that doesn't step forward, which I think would be not the case, we'll have to obviously look at this at some later date, but I'll look forward to seeing how this moves forward within the community.
Have you looked at any geography, Councillor Andrews? Any
I have.
specific
I have,
locations?
Your Worship, and one area that I thought was in fact near Tony Rose. There's, I guess, the Feed Street, which is, just before the curve, does have the appropriate incline, and based on the information that I received, it has, enough area.
By Jean Hamlin there,
Correct.
as you're coming down that
You do
slope.
have somewhat of a staging area, which would allow, participants to have their vehicles looked at. Again, the only thing that worries me a little bit is the cost per vehicle. The costs are between $400 and $800. For those of us who've done this many decades ago, we picked up a few sheets of plywood that seemed to be around the house and some old wheels, and it kind of made sense. But there is a standard now for the sake of consistency of all of the soapbox racers themselves. Safety has to be paramount as part of the decision too as well.
Well, I can see sponsored soapbox cars.
Oh, I agree.
So I think there'll be some local businesses or dads that have businesses that'll want to.
I mean, this is the lighter side of things that we've been up to, and I this just kind of provides an opportunity for members of the community to get involved.
I think that's a great
way.
location because the disruption
It would
to
be minimal.
traffic would be minimal there. You can get.
And it's a long enough area. I've kind of
and
measured
lots of parking. I mean, if it was on a Saturday, obviously the school parking lot would be available as well as the Tony Rose lot.
Very quickly, I know it's late in the evening, but I recall a few years ago when, not to say a similar event, but we had the electric car races that were being held over at ODSS, and you had a variety of competitors, and the track itself actually went around Orangeville District Secondary School, and it was well choreographed, and the appropriate safety measures were put into place. So again, I'd be happy to participate in the subcommittee or whatever else is necessary to to pull this off. Well,
Okay.
thank you again, Mr. Osmond, and to Ms. Doherty as well for this report.
All right, so did you want to make that motion, Mr. Andrews? Sorry. You're back on.
I'd like to make that motion that we move ahead.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Sherwood. All in favor? Thank you. All right, we have no correspondence. Question period. Anybody from the audience would like to ask questions? Yes, sir. Yes, soapbox, here he goes, yeah. We need a, can you light him up there, Madam Clerk?
Oh, it is on. Perfect.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, other members of council and town staff, and my friend over here.
Madam Treasurer, yes.
Madam Treasurer also. I have two comments regarding tonight and the meeting. And one is on the Humberlands, and one is on the fire hall. And I just want to say that during my term on council, many times I brought up about trying to work with CVC to see if we could not expand the location that we have now for the fire hall. And during that time, and Mr. Jones can tell you better than I can, the date, I'm sure he knows the date and the hour and the whole, all that information. We had two 100-year floods, back to back, approximately 2 months apart, and the water never reached the present fire hall. So I don't feel there's any fear of ever having that site flooded out as far as the fire hall goes. So I'm glad to see that this council is now going back and working with CVC to see if we cannot come up with a resolution. But in case we can't, tonight there was talk of the Humberlands come up. And also with the Humberlands, I'd just like to say to council, That's a piece of property in Orangeville which I don't need to tell you is unable to replace if you sold it in its entirety. And during the term on council, it's public knowledge that we had talks regarding selling the Humberlands. I, as a resident, would like to see this council look at, if they're going to sell the Humberlands, holding on to a piece of that property for the town of Orangeville for future use. It's on Humber. It may be a great location if we had to build a new fire hall. Easy access to get out of Orangeville to all the other municipalities that we service, plus get the Highway 10 down Hanson. And also, we may look at the same time. There's talk on Hanson of that property where the dog park is now located of developing it. And I'm not sure what would happen with the dog park, but it may be a portion of the Humberlands that'd be a great place to put the new dog park. So these are just some of the comments I want to make regarding the Humberlands and regarding the fire hall, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kidd. I know there has been some residents that have been lobbying for a West End dog park as well, so we'll have to think about that going forward.
And I guess I should give my name, Don Kidd, and I'm an Orangeville resident.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from the audience? Seeing none, we're going to move on to recommendation that the minutes of the following meetings be received. Committee of Adjustment, Orangeville Public Library Board, Orangeville Accessibility and Seniors Advisory Committee, and the Police Service Board. May I have a motion to receive those? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Sherwood. Any comments on those minutes? All in favor? Councillor Peters. Notice of motion prior to meeting. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Sorry, I guess this isn't prior to meeting, but since there wasn't one, this will be for next meeting. Bear with me, it's a little lengthy, but it is very relevant, seeing as we had CVC presenting to us earlier. So just as a bit of background, we're all aware of some of the provincial changes to conservation authorities in Ontario. There's been extensive talks about this at the board level, at CVC. Obviously, we don't know exactly what that future holds in terms of core versus non-core or mandated versus non-mandated initiatives. Personally, I feel very strongly that CVC serves this town very well, and there have been other municipalities that have shown their support in that regard. On the contrary, there have been some municipalities that have made motions in support of a reduction of their local conservation authorities' services. So with all of that flying around, this one is obviously in support of CVC, and I think it outlines, the town's commitment to their organization, because in turn they have been very committed to Orangeville. So that said, deep breath, here we go. Whereas the town of Orangeville is a member of the Credit Valley Conservation Authority, CVC, and has representation on the board of directors, and whereas the town of Orangeville strives to be a leader with respect to environmental awareness and action, and whereas the board of directors determines the policies, priorities, and budget of the CVC, and whereas the CVC provides the town of Orangeville with expert advice on the environmental impacts of land use planning proposals, and that the municipality does not have staff with comparable expertise or experience. And whereas the CVC provides programs and services to the residents of Orangeville that include recreation, education, water quality, low-impact development, tree planting, as well as protecting life and property through a variety of measures. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Orangeville supports continuation of the programs and services of the CVC, both mandatory and non-mandatory, and that no programs or services of the CVC or other CAs in Ontario be wound down at this time. And that the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks give clear direction as to what programs and services are considered mandatory and non-mandatory, and how those programs will be funded in the future. And that the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks recognizes the strong and positive provincial role conservation authorities play in flood risk reduction programs, and reinstates funding to the CAs, Conservation Authorities of Ontario. And that this resolution be forwarded to the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Premier Doug Ford, MPP Sylvia Jones, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Credit Valley Conservation Authority, Conservation Ontario, and all Ontario municipalities. So that will be on the agenda next time. Happy to take any questions in the following weeks between now and then.
Okay. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, I have a notice of motion at meeting.
Before you get into yours, any comments on Councillor Peters? No? Okay, carry on.
And I haven't prepared it because I just thought of it. So
Okay.
I'm hoping that the Madam Clerk can help pretty it up when I give you my thoughts. I would like to put a motion forward that future budget presentations contain actuals, 1 or 2 years, if possible, of historical trends that we can use for comparative reasons rather than budget versus budget. That can be included, but I would like to see some historical actuals, audited actuals.
Okay, very good. Any other notices of motion? Seeing none, any new business? Seeing none. We have bylaws. This is a recommendation that the bylaws listed below be read 3 times and finally passed. A bylaw to repeal bylaws 134-2006 and 121-2009, being bylaws to license, pardon me, regulate and govern installers of signs in the town of Orangeville, and that a bylaw to amend bylaw 2013, being a bylaw to regulate the use and erection of signs, canopies, and other advertising devices in the town of Orangeville, and a bylaw to amend bylaw 021-2019 to confirm appointments to various boards and committees, and a bylaw to establish the provision and fees for civil marriage solemnization ceremonies, and a bylaw to adopt the 2020 operating and capital budgets to be provided under separate cover on Friday, December 13th, 2019, and a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Orangeville at its regular council meeting held on December 16th, 2019. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to bring to Council's attention, and thank you to Councillor Sherwood, with respect to the appointments to the various boards and committees bylaw. There has been an update since the printing of the agenda, which includes the resignation of Veronica from the BIA, and also includes noting who the representative is from the BIA on Heritage Orangeville. So that's just been amended and will be approved, of course, if council approves it. And then the only other thing I just want to draw to your attention, the draft bylaw for the budget was circulated to you, so it is being approved with the change as you voted on earlier on in the meeting. So the amount will change from 36,053,171 to 36,137,361. So just for your information.
Thank you. Okay, so somebody want to make that motion? Pass those bylaws, Councillor Sherwood, seconder, Councillor Post. Any further comment? All in favor? All right, may I have a motion to adjourn? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, Councillor Andrews, all in favor? Thank you.